Hi, my name is Mark Black. In this video, we're going to look at some sample installation scenarios for IBM Spectrum LSF Suite 10.2. So this is part of a series of videos, and in this one, we're looking at the actual installation. If you're interested in how you would manage the cluster, you may be interested in the future videos, or if you're interested in some of the prerequisites, you could look at some of the older videos for that information. Okay, let's start out with the most simplest installation of all, basically just installing on one machine. So in our installation environment, it looks something like this. So we have a machine, and somewhere out there on our network, we have an OS repository where we can get some prerequisite packages or dependencies. And on this single machine, we're going to install it with the LSF masters role, the GUI host role, and the database role. So let's go and do a live demonstration. So in it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to customize the cluster name. I'm going to set up the role of the machine. I'm going to run the installation and do some basic verification. Okay, let's switch over to the live environment and do that now. Okay, so this is my single machine where I'm going to do the installation. And just to recap what I've done already, so I have my installer files that I've downloaded. And I've ran these and accepted the license agreement. So it's set up this machine to be the deployer node. Now what I want to do is go in and customize the installation. So I do that by going to opt, IBM, LSF installer, and we're looking in the playbook directory. So these are the playbooks, and if you recall from the previous videos, I have two files that I can edit here. The LSF config YAML file, let's start with that one. And here's some basic parameters. I'm going to change the cluster name. Oops. I'm going to just call it my LSF. I'm going to leave the monitoring on. And this is a single machine installation, so I don't have a shared directory. And I'm going to use this machine also as the database host, so I don't need to modify or set the JDBC string. So that's all good. The other thing I want to check is the LSF inventory file. Okay, so my LSF master host is, of course, this machine where I'm installing. It's also going to be an LSF server and an LSF client because it's essentially supersets. The LSF master is a superset of the other LSF roles. I'm also going to install the GUI on this box and use this box also to be the database. Okay, so that's the files ready. So I, of course, would typically run my tests, so I'll do that really quickly. Yeah, LSF inventory. And I'm going to run my configuration test first. Okay, config looks okay. So there's no failed tests. Let's run the pre-deployment test as well. Let's just test a few more things. Okay, that's almost done. Oh, that's finished. So both of my pre-deployment tests work. Now let's actually go and deploy it. So I use the deploy playbook this time. Okay, and away it goes. So this will take a few minutes to run. So I'm going to pause the video here, and we'll resume it when it gets further along. Okay, so the install is finished, and it's given me a URL that I can use to connect to the GUI. So let's try out a few commands first. So the first thing I need to do is refresh my environment. So let me just log out and log back in. Okay. There we go. My cluster is called my LSF. And I have one machine in there. And let's see, B hosts. Yep, status is okay. All right, let's check the GUI. Okay, one thing I need to do before I can log into the GUI is I've created well, as part of the installation, it creates an LSF admin user. And it doesn't set the password, right? It just creates a user. So let me just set that password so we can use it to log in. Okay, so now I need to get my browser up and running. Let me just do that now. Okay, so this is my browser. I typed in that URL and it's given me this login screen. I'm going to log in as LSF admin because it's an account that I know exists, and it's using that password that I just said like a moment ago. Okay, so here's my screen. Let's take a quick look at the resources. And sure enough, I've got one host. Okay. Okay, let's look at a little bit more advanced installation. We're going to have now two LSF masters, and we're going to put the GUI service onto the secondary LSF master, and we'll have several LSF servers for doing work. So this is what our environment looks like. We have our LSF master, and it's going to be the primary LSF master. We'll have a second host. We'll use that as the secondary LSF master, so we have, some degree of failover. We'll also run the GUI host, the GUI services here, and the database. And I've got my LSF server boxes here for running the actual work. I still have my OS repository set up so that I can pull in dependencies, and I have this additional directory here for HA. So this is a little larger installation, and it allows us to provide some degree of failover for the LSF master services. So if we're to lose one of the LSF master hosts, the work is going to continue to run. In this live demo, you'll see the setup of the shared directory. You'll see the setup of the roles for each of the machines. I'll do the installation, and I'll do some basic verification steps. Let's do that right now. Okay, so I've reset the environment from before, and we're back to a clean state. Now in this case, I'm going to install two LSF masters. I'm going to use the secondary LSF master to run both the GUI and the database, and I'm going to have some LSF servers. So let's look at how I do that. Let's start off by editing the inventory file. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to have two LSF masters. And I'm going to use the second one, so the MA1 Hyper 6, as my new GUI host. So I changed the GUI host to be MA1 Hyper 6, and I'm also going to run the database there as well. Other things that I want to do is let's have some LSF server hosts. Let's do that. Idiot D. And let me use a range here. So just to show you that you don't have to specify all the hosts. So this will be host idiot D1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so that's my LSF inventory file set up. Now, the other thing that I need to do is, because we have two LSF masters, or we've separated the primary LSF master from the GUI host, I need to use a shared directory. So my shared directory, let me just show you where that is. So this is going to be my primary LSF master, and I have a directory here already mounted called shared LSF suite. and there's nothing in there. Okay, so and that's available on both the primary and secondary masters. I've already mounted those. Now I need to tell my playbook or my LSF configuration where is that shared directory. And I do that in the LSF config.yaml file. And I set the HA shared. Okay, so that's it. Now I go and rerun it, the deployment. Normally I'd rerun the pre-deploy tests, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to go ahead and deploy. So I give it the inventory file, and we're going to use the deploy playbook. And away it goes. So you'll notice it's expanded out that expression into the various hosts. So host 88 D1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to let that run. So I'll just pause the video here, and I'll come back in a few minutes. Okay, so that took about 10 minutes to complete. So let's take a look at it. CH. So I'm actually logging into the primary LSF master now. I had the deployment node or the deployer on a separate machine. ID. Of course, I'd reset the environment, so the cluster name is back to the old default name. Oops, LS hosts. Here we go. We've got two machines, and you'll notice there in the MG, this is the management group. So those are the LSF master hosts, and these machines here, these are the four LSF servers that we added. Let's make sure everything's okay. Yep, status is okay, so they're all ready to run. All right, let me go to switch to the GUI and see what's going on there. Okay, here's my GUI, and I'm going to log in with my LSF admin user. And let's take a look at the resources. And sure enough, I've got 6 machines. Cool. Okay, let's look at a larger installation. Here, we're going to separate out some of the roles. So I'm going to have 2 LSF master hosts and 3 GUI hosts and many servers. So I've separated out my LSF masters, so I have my primary and secondary masters. I have my GUI hosts separated out into different machines as well. And I'm taking one of those to host the database. And of course, I have many LSF servers. And again, I have my OS repository and shared directory for HA. Okay, so in this environment, jobs will continue to run if the primary or secondary LSF master dies. So as long as there's one LSF master available, jobs will continue to run. Also now the GUI is running on 3 hosts. So ideally what we want to do there is say provide like a load balancer to load balance the traffic to the GUI hosts, but that's really outside of the scope of this installer. So what will you see in this live demo? Well, I'll verify that the HA directory is set up. I'll set up the roles of the machines and show you that. We'll run the install, and again, I'll do some basic verification. Okay, so now we want to deploy a larger environment with 2 LSF masters, 3 GUI hosts, and a bunch of LSF servers. So let's edit the LSF inventory file and set that up. So I've prepared one already. So we have 2 machines to be our LSF masters, And let's take a look at the GUI hosts. You'll notice we've separated the GUI hosts from the LSF master, so they're running on separate machines. And we have one of those machines we're using to be the database host, so the MA1 Hyper 6. And the other thing is I've defined a number of server hosts, and I've used this expression to do it. So it's host 86, 87, 88, and then B through E, and 1 through 4. So that gives me a total, I think, of about 49 machines to be LSF servers. So that's our inventory file setup. And let me just show you the conf file. Whoops. Oops. So we're leaving the cluster name as my cluster. We're leaving enabling the monitoring enabled, and we're using the shared LSF suite directory as our directory for HA. And again, I don't have to specify a JDBC string because we're deploying the database, or we're using the database host role. Okay, so those are the configuration files ready to go. Given the size of this cluster, what I would probably recommend is running the pre-deployment test first. So it may take a while because this is a larger cluster, but it's probably worthwhile. So we do that by running this command. So Ansible playbook -I LSF inventory, and we want to run this pre-deploy test. And if, say, if you're doing like a POC, for example, and you're using some VMs, this is very handy to make sure that you have, correct connectivity to all of those VMs. So as I said, we have 49 servers, 3 GUI hosts, and 2 LSF masters in this cluster. So that's what, 54 machines. So this will take a little bit longer to run this test. I'm going to pause the video here, and we'll come back when it's done. Okay, so the test completed, and everything's good. Okay, now we're ready to run the deployment. Okay. So this is going to take about maybe 10, 20 minutes to run. So I'm just going to pause the video here, and we'll come back to it when it's finished. Oh, failed to connect. Oh, looks like some of the machines may have maybe unreachable or down or something. So I'll have to take a look at that when it's finished. Okay, so I actually had to restart the install. I had some hostname errors, so I've corrected those, and we've let the install run. And you can see that all of the machines have successfully installed. So let's log in there and see that everything's okay. So I'll go to one. So the usual machine. Okay, so now remember we changed the LSF primary LSF master is now in this machine here. Let's get a list of all the hosts. These are the hosts in the cluster, and you'll see that these two are part of the management group. So these are the LSF masters, the primary and secondary. And let's see, B hosts. And let's see, is everything okay? Yep, LSF says everything's okay. Let's look at the GUI now. Okay, let me log in. And look at the resources. Hey, we've got 53 hosts. Nice. Okay, let's look at a large installation. So here, it's going to be similar to the previous configuration, except we're going to separate out the database. So I have my primary and secondary LSF masters. I have my GUI hosts, my LSF servers, my OS repository and shared directory for HA, and this time I have an external database set up, presumably with HA. Okay, so this one configuration is going to provide the maximum availability. So I have my LSF master failover. I have load balancing. Well, I have multiple GUI hosts set up, and you could use either any of those GUI hosts to access the cluster. Um, and the GUI will be protected from any failures in the database. So what are you going to see? Well, I'll set up the external database. I'll set up the roles on the machines. I'll set up the configuration for the external database. I'll do the install and some basic verification. Okay, let's do our installation now using an external database. So for the external database, there are some changes I need to make within the configuration files. So within the inventory file, I need to make sure that I haven't defined a DB host. Let's just check that now. And I've got my master's host, my servers, no clients, GUI host, and my database host. What I've done now is I've deleted the entry that was there, so the database installation will not be part of the LSF suite deployment. It is something that we'll have to do ourselves, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Okay, so I don't have my database set up yet, so let me go and do that right now. I'm going to use this machine. So this is just a fresh OS install. So let me just set up the database very quickly. Make sure I've got the repo set up. MariaDB. Okay, this is what I want here. Yum. Install. So in your case, you'd be installing this on a very reliable machine, perhaps with redundant power supplies and maybe a SAN back end, just to make sure that your database is reliable. The other thing that we would want to do is make sure that you have your database backup set up, so that if there ever was an issue, you'd be able to recover your database at least. Okay, I just have to turn the database on. Enable DB. Okay, and we want to start that. Okay, database is started. Oh, gosh, I forgot to do something. All right. So I need to copy over the SQL files in order to initialize the database. Those were copied to my deployer node when I ran that bin file. So what I want to do now is go back to my deployer node and copy them from there to this particular machine that's going to be my database. So let's just exit from this machine. Okay, so this is my deployer machine, and you've seen me running lots of commands from this playbook directory. But if I go down here, I have this directory called db schema. So let me go in there, db schema, and we'll use the MySQL. Okay, so here's the scripts that I need. So I need to copy those and to host idiot f1 root, and what did I call the directory? I forgot. SQL. Okay, so I've copied the files over from my deployment node to the machine that's going to be the database. Let me go back to the database machine. Host idiot 1. Okay, here's my database scripts. Now I need to go and create the database. So let me do that right now. SQL. So the instructions are the exact commands to run this are provided already. So just look at those and you can see that the commands are on. You can copy and paste. I haven't the root password set up, so hey, I'm able to get in there. So I'm just copy and paste from my cheat sheet. Okay, so this one creates the database called pack. And the next thing I need to do is grant the, create my user. I have a user called pack user, password pack user. And we got some more for my thing. Oh, the other thing I need to do is put in the names of the GUI hosts. Hyper 6. Seven and 8. Okay, so that's my pack user setup, and I've allowed access from my GUI hosts. So these machines here, 6, 7, and 8, those are the GUI hosts. Now I need to do a little bit more initialization. So I've created my database, so let's use that database. Pack. Okay, now I want to run those scripts that I had copied over to this machine into that SQL directory. So let me do that right now. You don't need to run all of the scripts, just the ones that are listed. Some of them there are actually to actually delete the database. Oh, almost done. Okay, so my database is now set up. I can exit. Quit. Okay, so one thing I have to note, this is now my database host, and I need to modify the configuration or the LSF config.yaml file to point to this as the database. So let me go do that right now. Okay, back to my playbook directory. I want to edit the LSF config YAML. And down here, we want to set the JDBC string. Normally it's set to default, none, but we want to set it to, well, my new database host. So I've got my host 88F1. The default port for MySQL or MariaDB is 3306. The database that I created is called pack. The user that I used is called pack user, and the password that I set was pack user. So you can see here there's a string that you can follow, or an example that you can follow to set up the correct values. Okay, so that's the JDBC string set. So our database is now ready. We've done all the necessary things to make sure that's an HA enabled database. So now we're good to go. Now I just want to run my playbook. Actually, I'm going to run the test first because I haven't. Ansible playbook. So my machines haven't been used for a while, so some of them are VMs. I need to give them like a kick in the pants to get them going. Run the pre-deploy test. Should wake everything up. It's going to take a moment or two, so I'm going to pause the video. Okay, so as I expected, some of my machines were not responding. As you can see, I was trying to ping these boxes, but some of them didn't respond. So my pre-check has had a failure. So I'm just going to run this a few times just to get everything woken up, and then I'll continue on with the install. Okay, so I finally got my pre-deployment check to run with no failure. So my cluster's in pretty good shape. So let's go ahead and run the actual deployment now. Deploy YAML, and here we go. So So this is going to take a while, so I'm going to pause the video again and let it run. Okay, so that was a little bit painful. I actually had an install issue on this box here. It failed to install one of the packages, so I ended up having to do the uninstall, then the redeploy. Okay, so eventually it's up and running. Let's go check it out. I'll go to the primary master. A. And you can see, okay, my machines are there. B hosts. Let's see if they're able to run batch jobs. Oh, gotta go source the environment. Okay. IBM. Sweet. Conv. No. Pro. LSF. Okay. That's better. Okay. So we can see all our hosts are all okay. Let me log into the GUI and make sure that's working. Just log in as my LSF admin user. And let's check out the resources. Cool, I have 53 hosts. Excellent. And okay, so this is using the external database. Alright, so I was a little fast on the initialization of the database, so I want to spend just a moment to show you what those steps were. So we have some SQL code that we need to run on the database host to initialize it. So you can copy that code from this location here on the deployer node. So there's a bunch of SQL files there. Copy those to your database host. Then on your database host, you want to initialize the database. So you can, after installing the database, you can log into it. If no password is set for root, just run mysql-u root. Then we create the database with the database is called pack. We then grant access to pack user, basically set it up for the password. So pack user is my password. Pack user is also my user. And the other thing I want to do is run this also for each of the database hosts, or sorry, the GUI hosts that I have, so that the GUI host can access the database. Once I've done that, I want to then use the pack database that I've just created and source these SQL scripts that I've copied over to initialize the database. Once I've done that, I can then quit, and my database is now ready to use. Okay, so I thought that would be helpful to add this. Okay, in summary, so you've seen how to set up various sizes of clusters. You've seen how to control the roles of the machines in the cluster and how to set the cluster name. You've also seen how to set up the shared directory to enable HA, and you've seen how to configure an external database. In the next video, we'll take a look at how to do an uninstall. And if you want more information about LSF Suite, there's a link here. So again, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.